Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about the tips for a great cake and some of the things that I've learned over time. So when I first started, I'd bake my cakes and they just didn't have the height. Like, I asked one of my neighbors, I remember I'd asked one of my neighbors, I'm like, how do you get your cakes so tall? Each time I bake mine, they're like half, and sometimes I'd add even a little bit more of the cake butter, hoping for more height, and it just wouldn't work. And I remember my neighbor was like, no, you just need time and to figure it out. Turns out the time and figuring out was baking soda. So you're gonna have my basic cake recipe, vanilla cake recipe. I'm gonna share it at some point um as we go, but my basic cake vanilla cake recipe calls for 5 cups of flour. And now with 5 cups of flour excuse me 5 cups of flour, you need 4 teaspoons baking powder and a teaspoon baking soda. So I'm not sure how the math works, and I'm not gonna try and explain the science behind all that. All I know is that after doing my equations and figuring out 1 teaspoon, rather 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 4 teaspoons of baking powder would give my cake enough height. That's what I've been going with without compromising the taste of the cake. So you need a bit of baking soda just to help you with that height for your cake. And then the second thing I figured out is sour milk. Our friends call it buttermilk. It makes your cake so moist and it just makes all the difference in the world. So guys, instead of using fresh milk when a recipe goes for milk, you use your sour milk instead to do your mix, and that will just make all the difference in the world. And after you're done with mixing everything, for my recipe that calls for 5 cups of flour, I do use at the end of it everything a teaspoon of vinegar, and the cake is just really moist and it's perfect. So you need to do that. You need to add a teaspoon of of vinegar. You're gonna need to switch your milk to buttermilk, and then add baking soda to help your cake with a bit of height. But at the end of the day, before you add your baking soda, you're gonna have to rework your recipe and just do the math just to see, just to make sure you're not putting too much baking soda, because it can be terrible if you have too much of it in your cake. I'm gonna share my recipe pretty soon. I just need to write it down, and yeah, make sure there's a link you can follow to get to the recipe. Also, what you need is to tap your pan when you're done baking and you've put your cake batter in your pan. You're gonna tap it a couple of times just to get the air bubbles out and to get your cake batter settled properly, and then you can bake. Then another tip is to not overheat your oven. When I first started baking, I'd bake at 180 and my cakes would always crack or they'd be too dry. So with time I started to adjust until I figured out what temperature would work for my size of stove. So you're also gonna figure out what temperature works for the size of this oven that you're using. So for my size, it's just a normal DeFi stove, normal oven, nothing really big or fancy. So for that one, what I use is 160 degrees to bake my cake, and my 8-inch double layer cake bakes in there for an hour and 10 minutes, nothing more than that. And like, you don't open your oven while it's baking. Mid baking, you leave it closed until your alarm goes off, and then you go and put your toothpick in and pull it out, and it comes out great. So don't open the oven. Tap your cake pans, vinegar, sour milk, baking soda, and last and most importantly is make sure if you're using the creaming method that you beat your butter and your sugar for at least 8 minutes. Like let it just beat, let the butter double in size and change color, become lighter, and then that's the consistency you're looking for. And then when you're done beating it, you can set it on high speed and beat it for that long. And then when you're done doing that, then you can now start incorporating your eggs at maybe two at a time, because that recipe does call for eight eggs, so maybe two at a time. And then when you're done, now you reduce your mixer to one. I take it all the way to one, and now you start alternating between your buttermilk and your flour bit by bit. It helps incorporate the flour better in your butter, and you don't come out with lumps, and it's just really nice, and it's moist, and it doesn't develop gluten, like become thick like a bun, because you've over mixed it once you reduce the speed of your mixer. So thank you guys for watching this episode, and see you on the next one.